Brilliant. Okay, welcome to this meeting of the Corporate Select Committee. I'm Councillor Chris Payne, Chair of this committee. I would like to inform everybody present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet via the Council's website and will be capable of repeated viewing. The images and sound recording may be used for training purposes within the Council. In order to ensure that the meeting is managed effectively, can everyone please keep to the following guidelines for speaking? Councillors should only use the raise your hand function to request to speak. Only speak when invited to do so by the chair. Please switch off your camera and microphone when not speaking, and remember to set your mobile phone to silent for the duration of the meeting. Any views expressed by any speaker in this meeting are the speaker's own, and they do not necessarily reflect the view of the council. Please can councillors be aware that the webcast will continue to be streamed live 20 seconds after the close of the meeting. This is due to a time delay in transmitting live. Okay, so thanks for that. I don't think that we had any apologies for absence earlier. Have there been any since we last spoke? No?
No, Chair, no, I've not received any apologies.
Okay, thanks for that. Anybody else aware of any? No? Okay, we'll move on then. Item 2 is to receive disclosures of interest on any matters before the committee. Do we have any disclosable pecuniary interests? No? Or any other interests? Okay, no, we can move on to item 3 then. Have we had any matters referred to the committee under the call-in procedure? I'm not aware of any.
No, Chair, we're not aware of any, thank you.
Thanks, Sally. Okay, so we can move on to item 4, which is pages 3 to 8 in the agenda. Minutes of the previous meeting. I've read them and I'm happy that they reflect the meeting that we had previously. Any other comments or anything anybody wants to add? No. Could I have a proposer and a seconder for the minutes, please? Ed, you're happy to propose? And who else's hand have I got up? Oh, I think people have taken their hands down. Someone just shout up seconding.
Yeah, Mark.
Seconded.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Okay, we're now going to move on to item 5, which is pages 9 to 16, which is the Select Committee Work Programme. I don't know, is anybody actually presenting this, or is this just for us to work our way through? Oh, hi, Anthony.
Yeah, it's just for your committee to work its way through, and any comments sort of raised. We've got a meeting of the programming group coming up later this week.
We have tomorrow.
No, Wednesday, isn't it, at 5 o'clock?
Oh, is it Wednesday?
Yeah.
Oh, well, anyway, I know it's this week anyway. Okay, has anybody got anything that they want to add to this? I have a couple of questions. So before I ask mine, has anybody got anything else? Okay. Ed, I know when we did the WhatsApp, you asked for a quick verbal update on the Glossop Halls.
Yeah.
Was there anything specific? It was just progress, I think, wasn't it? What point are we at?
What point we're at? That's why it's in part 2, I think, because there's sensitive information in it. But yeah, just to get an update where we are and when it'll be open, because residents have been asking about it and have been inquiring about it. So it'd be useful to have some information to get back to them, even if it's like just a date of when we expect it to be open. I mean,
Okay.
it's like any project. I think obviously Andrew will go on about it later on, but it's like any project, they hit snags. Even at home, you have snagging problems. So someone I know is having a kitchen fitted, and that's hit a snagging problem this week, and they was expecting it to be done last week. So everything has its time for constraints, and things take longer than people think.
Okay, well we'll leave it until part 2. Okay. Anybody else? I can't see any hands being raised. No. Oh, hang on. There was one. Joanna?
Yeah, I have a related issue, which is Dates for the next meetings. It's getting hard to sort of organise one's life because we
Okay.
haven't got the dates sort of going forward.
Okay, I'll take an action to have a chat with Rachel about that.
Yeah.
She's off this week. Sally's standing in for her, but
Do you want me to come in there just to say? So we do now have a draft calendar of meetings, and we'll be able to issue those out to members soon. Obviously, they will need full approval at annual council in May, but we'll try and get those, at least provisional dates if somebody does need them.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
okay, thanks, Joanna. And I guess we'll add to this on Wednesday. Okay, so if there's no further input on that, can we move to item number 6, which is the Derbyshire Strategic Leaders Board and devolution? And are you presenting on this, Anthony?
Yes, Chair.
Okay.
Okay. For information, the paper before members this evening is essentially advising around a rearrangement of some of the outside bodies that we send members to that meet across Derbyshire at current. There's been a bit of a job of work been underway for a little while, including slightly prior to the establishment of the East Midlands Mayoral Combined Authority, to look at just making sure that the various meetings that take place across the county of leaders and chief execs and other members and other staff members at times are sort of been done in the most efficient way. For those members that are longer in the tooth, you'll recall that a little while ago we set up the Vision Derbyshire project, which was an aim around looking at ways that the various councils across the county could try and work together better on a number of projects, essentially a sort of an alternative to potential talks that were taking place around the time of sort of local government reorganisation. But to a certain extent, the process of work and the work done during Vision Derbyshire has sort of helped provide a good footing for the work that we've been able to undertake around devolution with the establishment of the East Midlands Mayoral Combined Authority. Essentially, the paper before you this evening is just seeking support and a recommendation from the committee for us to basically sort of realign the existing meetings into one main body, which will replace and act in place of the old D2 Economic Committee and Vision Derbyshire Board, and sort of realign them slightly to make sure that they're ready for the impending sort of mayoral combined authority and its full implementation once the new regional mayors elected on the 2nd of May. Additional intentions around it will be sort of a number of the theme groups, particularly on the Vision Derbyshire side, that have been of quite a bit of use, particularly on some of the climate change work. The intention will be that once we've got the mayoral authority fully established, a number of those theme groups will also then be re-established to cover particular areas, and we'll also be looking at how we can try and engage and involve more members than just effectively the various leaders and deputy leaders of the councils as appropriate for each of the different theme groups. And with that, Chair, happy for any questions.
Well, I'll get the ball rolling, Anthony. I think I see on here that you would still be the board member who's going for High Peak. I think I've got that right.
Yes, Chair.
When I was reading through it, I think section 10.4 on page 14, if you were just basically a member of the public looking at this and saying, well, how does it all work? The various layers of local government, is probably a fairly succinct list of the things that the combined authority will be doing. How do you envisage the communications working post this being implemented to explain it to your person in the street?
I mean, to a certain extent, whilst it's a quite succinct list of headings, there's obviously significant work required under most of those. And there'll be a bit of a process as well in terms of when the mayoral powers kick in with some of these. So, for example, although certain parts of the powers for transport issues come into effect from the mayor being elected on the 2nd of May, some of those will actually take a little while over sort of the course of the next 18 months to 2 years before the mayor will have the full powers of them. So to a certain extent, some of those works will continue being done by the relevant county councils or the two cities. So in terms of a lot of those, some of these are sort of the process of getting the headlines assigned as part of the mayoral combined authority, and then there'll be another process then of going through the detail of exactly how it'll work, because depending on, to a certain extent, depending on which of the candidates gets elected as mayor, there's sort of some general intentions that we've picked out from what we've seen from any of the candidates so far, but there may well be some particular quirks in terms of whether they're looking at how much of the power essentially they may well be looking at sort of holding with themselves as part of the mayoral combined authority, and where there are relevant areas they may well look to be passporting some of those powers down. So for example, one of the areas that's of particular not quite concern at the moment, because in theory the money will still be there, it'll just be the control around it, but the UK Shared Prosperity Fund that was allocated to all of the district councils when it was set up a couple of years back, that's one of the areas of funding that goes into the mayoral combined authority. So there's some work to be done to work out exactly whether all of that funding will stay and be allocated by the mayor as part of the combined authority, or whether some of that will still be allocated back to the district councils for us to be able to use. And so at the moment, there's still a little bit of sort of suck it and see in terms of sort of how some of those links will work. We've got the sort of the draft constitution to sort of set the thing up. But to a certain extent, some of the finer details is going to depend on which of the mayors we get.
Okay, fair comment. I can see Ed's got his hand up.
Yeah, I think it's got to be welcome that they're going to involve the boroughs this time, because that was the disappointing part about the setup. It just was the 4 main higher level authorities, and it was like, we've got so much experience and so much skills that we can bring to the table in part of setup and continuing moving this forward. I mean, obviously, Anthony, you've got 20 odd years experience of being a councillor and a leader in the borough, so we've got some, it's finally being listened to, and we're finally getting some of us our experience onto there, and we can feedback properly, which is good. And obviously the shared prosperity is something that we do need to look at, because with this combined authority, we need to make sure that funding gets allocated. That's a big fear of ours, is that if we end up giving all the shared prosperity over, would that be all allocated to different parts of the area, and the High Peak would be the loser in the situation? Because that was our big fear the first time the mayoral suggestion came around, and obviously now it's an official, and we've got an election, and we're going to get a mayor. We've got to make sure that we get our fair share of the money for our residents in the borough.
Yeah, I mean, just to clarify on the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, it's not a choice. This is how it's been allocated, how it will be allocated by government after March 2025. The government's decided that it will go as part of the combined authority, so it's not a choice that we've got. It is still an area of work, and so parallel to that as well, there is still some work being done to make sure that the district representatives will have full voting rights. That's still an area where there's a job of work to be done. There's also a couple of changes that need to come through as part of the legislation in terms of some of the scrutiny set up for the combined authority, because there's a couple of errors in sort of the drafting, which is excluded to a certain extent some of the districts from being able to be fully involved in the scrutiny side of it, and we're expecting those to be corrected shortly. But to a certain, although we've not got the full voting powers, they're at the moment they're letting us sort of sit round the table, myself and the 3 other district reps, and at the first meeting of it 3 weeks ago now, we were able to have our input in those earlier discussions, and I hope that will continue, despite the fact that we know there'll be at least one different sort of leader around the table in the case of Nottingham, where they'll be electing a new leader of the council sort of through their annual council process.
Okay, thanks, Anthony. I think Rachel's got a hand up. Rachel Quinn.
Yeah, sorry, I'm going from one between the agenda and then back again. Sorry. On page 33, it talks about third paragraph from the end. Although it's assumed that councillors joining the D2 Strategic Leadership Board will wish to delegate responsibilities for collective decision making, whether or not councillors choose to do so is entirely a matter for them. Now, will there be any, and Anthony sort of touched on it, any scrutiny, any discussion, any debate about those decisions that comes back to High Peak? Or will it be something that that our representative will carry through on their own? Or will there be discussion with us?
In terms of the strategic leadership board level, there's no specific scrutiny set up for that, but essentially that's the part that's already been in operation so far. So in the case of any sort of significant changes, they've generally got to go through the scrutiny and then executive processes at each of the home councils before they can go to the leadership board. So, for example, at the moment, the report that's before us this evening needs to have been approved by each of the district councils, the county council and the city council before we can implement this arrangement. So that's not really that much difference to sort of how it is already. And in general, the majority of the decisions are generally taken by consensus. I think there's not been that many occasions when it's had to go to a vote for something to happen. Although, looking at it sort of, it is a political entity, and who knows whether the pending county council elections next year may change that. We don't know. We'll have to wait and see on that.
Thanks, Anthony.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Thanks, Rachel. Did someone else have their hand up? I can't see. No? Okay, that's fine. So if there's nobody else, I think we're moving to the recommendation, which, as Anthony said, is more noting things, I think, rather than actually doing anything. But the recommendations are on page 3. They run from 2.1. There's about 8 bullet points, but I think you paraphrased them pretty well, Anthony. I don't think there's anything else in there we need to pick out.
No, not at this time, Chair, but we suspect, particularly during the first year of the operation of the Mayoral Combined Authority, once we've got the mayor in place, we suspect there'll probably be a number of areas where there'll be regular updates to sort of come back through this committee and others. So we are setting up a process where we can make sure, both for full council and potentially for some of the committees, just to make sure that we've got the right process to make sure we can update members as and when there's any changes or additions.
Yes, and I the reason I asked about the comms was I could see in the future, given all the caveats that you spoke about how this might work in the future, that there needs to be quite a lot of good comms. I think that the Manchester mayor has an advantage in that everybody who lives inside Manchester sees themselves as Mancunian. I sort of suspect that people in Gloucester don't really see a lot of affinity with people in Newark, generally.
No, I think it is one of the challenges that we've raised as part of the process all the way through. Some of the comms at the moment, in terms of sort of explaining sort of what the mayoralty is, what the powers are likely to be, and there will be going out. I think the timetable sort of suggests it'll start from next week. There will be an information booklet going out to in theory, every elector, but I suspect it's more likely every household at least, that will have information on what the combined mayoral authority is, and also information on all of the candidates that paid to be included within it. It'll have sort of I think it's a two sides of A4 type sort of, this is who I am, please vote for me type information, I suspect.
Good. Okay, thanks, Anthony. Well, given that it's looking for support, is there someone happy to propose? Ed, and who's the other person? Who else had their hand up? The technology's not working that well. I know someone else put their hand up. Verbally, can someone second?
I'm happy to, Nev.
Okay. Oh, thanks, Joanne. Joanne's seconded. Brilliant. Thank you. I don't know why, but my tech's not working as well as it should do. Okay, so we can move on to item 7, which is Alliance North. I think. Yes.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members of the council, officers of the council. I've been asked along. My name is Tony Taylor. I'm the operations director at Alliance North to just give you a brief overview of I suppose performance to date and where we're at. So I've got a slide deck which Sally's going to put on for me now because I've got some issues with my tech as well. Since I updated my laptop, nobody can hear me on it any longer. So Sally, if you want to just put the presentation on, we'll go through that.
Tony, as usual, unfortunately, I'm having a slight issue as well. So bear with me 1 second.
It's fine. Thanks, Sally. Can everybody see that? Good. So obviously Alliance North, partnership between Staffordshire Moorland District Council and obviously High Peak Borough Council. Your point of interest tonight being High Peak Borough Council. You want to move on to the next slide, Sally? Thank you. So obviously we provide the services of cleaning and caretaking, plan and responsive building maintenance, management and delivery of capital projects, compliance management for technical and project staff, and as of the 1st of April 2023, disabled adaptations with Enable being the main supplier in there. Next slide, please, Sally. Our team's made up of 98 members of staff. Obviously, there's myself as operations director. We've got Peter Chadwick of Edda Capital, Richard Howard in Head of Repairs, and Jade Seddon, compliance manager. And they were all part of the council before we tupered those staff across into the JV. And then we've got some new staff into the Tracy Whittle was the area cleaning manager. Kim Taylor who joined as an operations support manager and assist with the administration. And then we've got the admin side and the commissioning side for the DFG services, which is Lucy Brooks, who's our senior occupational therapist. We have got some minor amends going on to that to strengthen that in the forthcoming year. We've managed to put in a service manager, which will help us improve that service going forward. But I think it's fair to say we've had a very successful year in our first year delivering that service. Sally, on to the next one, please. So this was the finance overview provided to me by my finance team a couple of weeks ago. So obviously it will change as P12 gets delivered and landed. We're meeting with the council on Wednesday to finalise accounts, and they should be any point now. I can share, because it came in this afternoon, P11s, if anybody would be interested. It goes into greater detail of how this overarching update looks. So let me know if you want me to do that. So to date, a couple of weeks ago, we were at £16.4 million in sales overall. So that's all of the services that we provide through Alliance North. So that's inclusive of everything for both councils. And obviously the trading profit is 415 on that element. The HRE social housing reactor repair sales were at 6.1 million in there, with a trading profit of 180k. Housing capital sales was at 5.1 million and trading profit of 150k. Cleaning and caretaking services sales were at 1 million, and that was a trading profit of 31k. General fund capital sales were at 336,000 with a trading profit of 10. And then we've got general fund reactive repair sales at 841,000 with a trading profit of 25,000 on those. So those are general breakdowns. Obviously, it doesn't go into detail with overheads and everything else that to build up the whole 16 million. But that's where we were at before year end from the finance point of view. So Sally, if you want to move on to the next slide. So just to give some context and example to how well we've done in year one in terms of delivering the DFG in 2023-24, and these were year to date again. So there'll be slight shifts up, but not by very much. We managed to spend 1.455 million on the Staffordshire Moorlands accounts, which was made up with a breakdown there of level access showers, ramps, ceiling track hoists, through floor lifts, baths, extensions and stair lifts. And similarly on the Peak Borough Council account, we've managed to spend £1,138,607 in there, and broken down by level access showers, ramps, ceiling track hoists, through floor lifts, extensions and stair lifts. So I think it's fair to say that we've overachieved the budget. We did have to apply for more from reserve accounts to cover off all of those. And we're getting strong throughput in terms of case referrals for both accounts into this new financial year as well. Next slide, please, Sally. So these are onto the KPIs. So these are in more detail. So in terms of where we are on compliance, we're in a very good place in terms of where we're at. So year to date now we are 100% throughout. So property with current gas safe certificate 100%, response time to heating call outs, asbestos management plans, completed asbestos management checks, but no RIDORs at all since we've been trading from the 4th of July in 2022. Digitised asbestos records again, their current FRAs on record. We're at 100% everywhere on all our compliance. I think it's fair to say that we've managed to keep in a good place on compliance. Sally, next slide, please. So again, this is just going on to say the same. So it's effectively that we are 100% throughout, with the exception of the fixed wire inspections. So just to be aware that we're at 97% year to date. Now everything is 100% within 10 years, but we're at 97% within 5 years. We are currently working through the last 30 properties, and we'll have all that within 100% within the next few weeks. And we've engaged a specialist contractor to help us achieve that as well.
Tony, can I just ask you a question before you move on? So
yeah, of course you can.
You've got a row in there which is digitised asbestos register records. You've got it in red. What does that red mean? I mean, I can see all the other asbestos stuff's in green.
Yes. Well, it just means we've not got everything in digitised form. So we've got asbestos records for everywhere, and we're working through getting more of those. But we're at 100% now. But it is latterly in this last year, so I'm waiting for that to filter through. The compliance team have done a lot of work to get those up to date.
Okay, so that should turn green.
Yes,
relatively soon. And then the last row, which I saw quite a lot of. I saw quite a lot of expenditure on stair lifts earlier in the presentation. It seemed to be getting better in Q4. So is that just an indication that you're not far off now?
We're nearly there, Chair, in terms of that. I think it was fair to say that some of the records that we were passed over were not accurate, and we've had a period of sense checking what properties have actually had those stair lifts in. Now we've identified those, they're all in programme, and that was a position from a couple of weeks ago. From a conversation with my team at the end of last week, we're down to the last few now that are going to be serviced, so we'll be at 100% on those as well. But they're not relating to the ones that are above, to be fair. These are legacy stair lifts that have been in for years, so we've got an obligation under compliance to ensure that they're serviced every 12 months. And obviously, when there's a call out as well, we cover that just in case there's a breakdown while a service users needs them.
So when you spoke about records, was that what caused that little weird dip in Q2 where it went from 58 to 32 and then back to 63?
Yes, we had a report to suggest that we had more stair lifts than we knew we had. And that's what threw us out. So we then had to do some data validation around those. So we've actually physically called each of those properties to ensure that those lifts still exist. Some of them did, some of them didn't. And obviously the ones that are there, we've now put onto programme. So we know exactly where every single lift is. And we've extended our contract with Stannard to ensure that those are all serviced now within the next few weeks.
Okay, thanks.
So next slide, please, Sally. So these give you some volumes now of the housing repair. So these are all IPs specific to that we don't undertake for Staffordshire Moorlands. So number of repairs reporting for housing, that's 16,642. That was year to date. So we haven't got Q4s in there. So we're significantly up on where you were previously. From some historic data that I managed to obtain from housing previously, they were about 11,500 previously. So we've got more cases being referred through there. Total number of repairs reported for corporate, so that's the general fund, so that's your council buildings, for instance. Those are at 1,500. P1 repairs, like I said, we focus on trying to get those to 100%. We're doing quite well in there, so 99%, 99.8 is year to date overall. We got 100% on the P1 repairs within 2 hours for corporate as well. We did a lot of work around corporate because we've been struggling to get those KPIs up. So again, you can see P2 repairs completed in 24 hours. Corporate is not quite where we want it to be, so we're a percentage off, but we are working on that. We've got a dedicated account officer in the help desk now, so that's helped bring that level up from our earlier performance. As you can see, we were quite poor to start out with on the general fund. I think that was legacy from the fact that the teams that trooped across were housing teams predominantly, so they didn't have that commercial background and general fund. So they've taken a lot of time to focus on that and improve their service levels on there. So P3 repairs completed on corporate, again, another area where we need to improve. But we're generally focusing on getting all of those up, and we're sort of within target across the board for most things. The only thing obviously we're concerned about is obviously number of justified complaints. So year to date we've got 22, so it's something we need to look at. The target was 15, tolerance was 20, so we're still within that, but we need to look at how we do that. Unjustified complaints have come through. It's fairly straightforward. And then tenants satisfied with repair service. We've got something else we've got to work on in terms of improvement. We're consistently above 90%, but we need to get that feedback up on there as well.
And for the justified complaints, is there any trend? Is there any common theme?
No, there's nothing common that we're failing on that we need to focus on in essence. So we're not aware of any trends that are forming in there. There have been legitimate complaints where we've got things wrong in terms of either scheduling, missed appointments, that we've not resolved an issue quick enough, and so on and so forth. So again, the team are focusing on those.
Okay.
Next slide, please, Sally. So on voids, we're doing a very good job on voids. So we're within target on those. Again, we've been improving over the year to date, 97.2% in voids complete within target. Cat 1 voids complete within 5 days. We're at 98% year to date. Cat 2 voids within 30 days, 96%. And Cat void 3 voids within 120 days at 96%. So we're well above there. So totally voids completed in March 21, average turnaround 17 days, an average cost of £4,529 for each of those voids.
A silly question, Tony. Can you tell me exactly what the definition of a void is?
So a void is when properties become vacant for whatever reason, and it needs a programme of works to bring it back up to a decent own standard for the next tenant. So it undergoes an assessment in the first instance to see what might be needed, and that might be something very simple, or it might be right through to a new kitchen, new bathroom, so on and so forth. Might need a rewire at the time, so on and so forth. Depends what the ICR says on that. But there's a full inspection and preparation for it. Sometimes that'll include decoration as well, depending on what the condition and state of the property is found in.
Thank you.
So I think we've got a question from Jean.
Oh, sorry, missed that.
Yes.
Sorry, Jean.
Could you describe exactly what you mean by categories? Category 1, 2, and 3. Is that what you
Well,
just
the categories
described?
are there. So yes, so obviously Cat 1 void's completed. So it's within it's the time frames for the categories. That's all. So it's where they're assessed and deemed to be. You know, if it's a significant program of works required, then it'll be in Cat 3. So it
Do
depends.
any of those include retrofitting?
What do you mean by in terms of retrofitting?
For efficiency, heating efficiency.
There is some decarbonisation works. We're currently installing new sill arrangements that are going to improve the thermal efficiency of windows and try and control damp and mould. So yeah, all of that's taken into consideration. So we'll look at what works we could do at the time if it's needed. Obviously, the capital programme also complements that as well. That wouldn't necessarily just wait for a void for us to do works like that. That would actually be complemented again by the capital programme as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and I think Joanne's got her hand up as well.
Yeah, thank you. Can I just ask whether there is a particular issue with damp and mould in our properties, and whether we keep proper track of how many people report that as an issue and how much we spend rectifying it?
In terms of spends, I haven't got that figure to mind at this moment in time. I've done some work with housing, but in terms of all damp and mould issues that are reported that come through Alliance, we log them, we report them to housing so they're aware. We undertake a survey and a report is prepared on the back of that. So we go to site and we undertake a proper assessment of the whole property. And once that's been undertaken, we come up with remedials that might address those. And that goes along with how our tenants can help themselves as well. So it's complemented in terms of a wide report. And that's again shared with the housing team as well. And what all of the works that are identified, then we arrange the remedials within a timely period, depending on what that is. So if it's roofing, if it's pointing, if it's internal leaks, or it's a window issue, then we will arrange all of those works to address those issues, and that is recorded, as we say. So we do know how many properties that are reported. We track and monitor that, and we share that with the housing team.
Okay, thank you.
So the next one is just about justified complaint.
Sorry, I did put my hand up. You probably can't see.
Oh, sorry,
sharing the screen. It's all right.
Yeah, the chair's muted as well at the moment, Martin.
Oh, sorry. I was trying to bring Martin in. Yeah, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Tony and Anthony. Just wanted to add that it's not just the housing team that are engaged on that. The assets team are as well. And I just wanted you to know that we've got a housing and surveyor in the team, and his report back to me was that the approach and process taken by Alliance North is as good as he's seen where he's been working. So he's working with us on an interim basis, so that means he gets out and about and sees a lot of processes working there. So that gives me assurance that what Tony's telling you happens in the real world, as it were, as well.
Great, thanks.
Okay, back to you, Tony.
Yeah, thank you. So obviously this is around the cleaning caretaking service. So these again complaints and unjustified complaints. So obviously year to date we've had one complaint that's justified, and we've had 17 unjustified complaints. And so that's not something we determine as well. We investigate and feedback, and that's determined by the council, not just on our sort of evaluation of the situation. That's after we've fed back and they understand the wider issue. And obviously, public toilets opened on time. We have had issues. We're not going to say we haven't. We've had some issues on occasions where we've been let down by staff, but broadly in line, we're at 98.88% year to date on opening of those. And then the quality audits were at 95.46%, so within tolerance above the 80% target.
Rachel wants to ask a question here.
Yeah, Rachel.
Yes, I do. Sorry, I've just managed to unmute myself. Could you sort of fill us in on a little more detail? Because in terms of toilets, certainly, it seems to be a little bit rocky. What kind of complaints have you had in that area?
I think sometimes condition and then around opening.
Right. Okay.
And I think availability in terms of repairs and maintenance as well, possibly another one. So we've had some closures due to, vandalism and issues with maintenance.
Okay. And are those issues resolved? Are we hoping to make progress towards the targets, or?
They are by and large now resolved. We have done a lot of work to refocus the repairs and maintenance service so they understand their obligations and commitments to bring all the general fund properties up to, back into service when they need it to. So we have actually done a lot of work on that in the last 12 months.
Is there any, or have there been any complaints, not just about cleanliness, but also about repairs in toilets as well?
Not so much about repairs. As I said, condition and how it's being found, and unavailability of facilities have been the main ones in the complaints there.
Okay, thank you.
Joanna, Joanna's taken a hand down. No, okay, I'll bring Linda in. Linda's got a hand up. I'll come back to you, Joanna.
No. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Tony, it must be, thanks for the report there. It must be extremely difficult sometimes for you to rate the cleaning and caretaking on some of our toilets. And I refer particularly to the disabled toilet on the market. How you could ever consider that to be adequate, I have no idea. And that would be through no fault of your own. Whether you've got any opinions on that?
Well, I think it's fair to say that a lot of the property would benefit by some additional investment to bring it up to a better standard. I think that does challenges, as you say. We're cleaners, we're not restorers. We're there to clean, and we can only. We do a lot of work around how we evidence it. So we make the operatives take photographs when they've left the property. Obviously, when the new vehicles actually arrive, we'll have a tracking system as well, which will give us the more accurate timestamps on when they arrived and when they left. But obviously, we do a lot of auditing around the condition so that we can evidence, how we left them after we cleaned them on each occasion, and shift when we attend. But obviously, we're not there all day at every facility, so it's at the mercy of any abuse that users might take out on the facilities, and we frequently find that we get a lot of vandalism. We've undertaken a regime of installing sort of more robust toilet roll holders, which might seem small element, but actually significantly address some of the thefts we were having around those issues in certain facilities. So we're constantly looking at how we can improve and make a more reliable service for the users.
Okay. All right, that's very diplomatically answered on some cases. I was going to just wait until the end because I did have another question, but since we're sort of taking as we go, just looking back at your KPIs,
yeah,
it doesn't give us any indication really as to what the repairs are. So sort of what's the difference between a P1 and a P4? And some people wait sort of 16 weeks, which obviously that's a quite serious repair, but we don't actually know what kind of status that repair is.
So P1 would fall into sort of like category of an emergency, so within 24 hours for the social housing portfolio. It's within 2 hours for the general fund. And it runs out to P4s, which is 112 days. So it might be a repair that's required, but obviously it's not urgent and compromising the tenant's ability to occupy the property, but it needs planning and delivering. So it ranges on a time frame from P1 to P4, and that's all that suggests is just around urgency around what that repair is.
Okay. 16 weeks is a long time for any kind of repair, really, though. I just wonder what we'd class as valued at waiting 16 weeks, really.
I would agree with you. It does seem excessive, but those were agreed and set by the council before we set off, and it will be something, as you say, something that doesn't compromise the ability to be able to occupy the property. I mean, certain things like doors and windows might take there might be a lead time on making them and then arranging the appointment to get them to site to do an install. So it might be something low level like that, or that's not affecting the property. So there might not be that many jobs in P4. Maybe it's something we can put into future updates, so you can see the numbers of jobs that fall into each of those categories, which we also monitor and track, and we do share at other points as well.
Okay, all right, thanks a lot.
Chair,
Okay.
just for information, we haven't yet had we normally have a workshop post sort of the borough plan been set around sort of just checking that the KPIs that we're monitoring, both ourselves and our partners, just to make sure that we are monitoring the right KPIs, and that in terms of the targets for those KPIs, we have got the right targets for that. We haven't yet had that session so far, so I suspect there will be an opportunity for members to sort of have a look at those when we have that workshop. It would normally have taken place by now, but I understand we've just not quite got round to sort of slotting the date in yet.
Yeah, I think that'll be useful, Anthony. I totally agree. I think we should review them, make sure that they're fit for purpose and they're suitable for what we're monitoring, because we can change them if everybody agrees, and we can look at that.
Yeah. And that's not just in terms of the Norse contract, that's wider across the council. So in terms of the information that you'd normally get through the quarterly updates, there is still that job of work to be done to sort of review those KPIs.
Okay, thanks, Anthony. I think Joanna, I'll bring you in now.
I think it's okay, actually. I think things have been more or less covered.
Okay, fine. Ed Siddle, you're next.
No, I think it's Rachel before me.
Can't be, because Rachel had already asked a question, so I'm bringing you in, Ed. I'll bring Rachel in a second.
She must have left a hand down. Yeah, just I'm on the board of trustees at the Opera House, and there's just been a few niggles about some repairs that have been done there and the time it's taken. Obviously, the Opera House has to self-fund itself, and recently we've had which is nothing to do with you, by the way, so let me just clarify that, a downtime where the safety curtain had to be fixed by specialists. So obviously you guys are the other people who fix problems in the Opera House. It's just a case of making sure that we have them done on a timely manner, because obviously if we have to close the Opera House, it loses money, and obviously the Opera House has to make money to make sure that it keeps itself sufficient. So it's just a case of making sure they're done in a timely manner, and that we work together on them with everyone at the Opera House, and obviously you guys at Norse.
Yeah, we did, including I actually attended site twice as well, Ed, to review and have a look at what we could do on there, and the compliance team were fully communicated where we're at. It was unfortunate. I think it was a bank holiday, a lengthy bank holiday weekend for Easter, and we were unable to influence the specialist contractors to be able to work over that period. But they did work every day prior to it and afterwards, and they did find some issues with legacy, arrangements that caused the failure of that safety curtain, and obviously we've now modified it as well. So as part of the works, we've made it more robust. We've made a more robust anchor point for the safety curtain, so it won't fail in the same way. And actually, we've identified what was the issue that was exacerbating that problem, which was the cable for the winch had been installed at too high, wider a width, so it was an 8mm cable instead of a 6mm cable, and that was causing the safety curtain, when it got to its top limit level, to judder, and that judder over a 20-year period caused that weld to fail. So what we've done to stop that and eliminate it is we've identified that the weights, the counterweights on either side were insufficient, and that's what we're causing it. So we've ordered those, and they're going to be installed in the next few days as well. So that safety curtain shouldn't fail ever again. But as you rightly point out, we take it very seriously, and we communicate with them, and we're asking them to communicate with us when they feel that they've got issues, because apparently they were aware of that and we weren't, that judder.
Yeah, I mean, it was really good work from you guys, and obviously Matthew, is that the surveyor guy that you was on about, Martin? He was really good, and I'm really impressed with him. He did really a lot of work, and you guys did to make sure it got back up and running. But it's other things like if we got a leak and things, I think they were panicking about that, and he's just making sure. Because at the end of the day, this is our firm, and we want to make sure that we give the best service to our people who hire the building, and we want to make sure that we are doing the best, because at the end of the day, you guys were brought in because the previous contractor was not doing the work that they should do, and we felt we could do it better, which we are doing. And I think it's just a case of monitoring, and if people have issues with it, we look at how we improve it, and obviously you guys then can make sure we can do the best, because we want to be the best, and you guys want to be the best for us, don't you?
Absolutely, no, and you're absolutely right. And it's the customer service element of all of our services is a key thing, and it's something that I've been passionate about trying to improve within the teams, because obviously they've come from a different background in certain circumstances. But so getting the maintenance teams to understand the levels of priority associated with all of our properties has been a key thing for us, and they've got there now. And I think that's a focus that we've got to continue to deliver on as well.
Okay, I'm going to bring in Bob McEwen, and then I'll come back to you, Rachel. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to wait till the end, but as everybody else has come in, just 3 very quick comments. It's very nice to see in the report we're not very rarely using agency staff. That's great, because that saves a lot of money, and in the future we'll hope there'll be apprentices coming through and, you know, joining the workforce. The second one was with the voids. We quite get called because, like, there's a bungalow near me, your staff finished it within about 10 days. That was 2 months ago, and the thing's still empty. So I think, is that a problem with the choice-based letting, that quite often after your staff have finished, that the bungalows, you know, haven't that still empty?
We don't, obviously, once we hand it back to the housing team, then obviously housing pick up on that one. So maybe Martin were better placed to answer the allocation to tenants, because obviously our challenge is to get the property fit for occupation.
Thanks. And the last point, it was just on the costings. 1 bath in Staffordshire Moorlands, I find that amazing, £9,000. You know, what was actually done? Did they have to do the room or a rebuild or something?
Well, I don't know about a particular case, but yeah, they can be quite extensive. On occasions, it might have been a wet room conversion as well, so it wasn't just a case of just replacing like for like. It might have needed specialist equipment. We might have found leak, a previous leak, or damage to the structure of the property that we needed to do more extensive works.
Yeah, thank you very much. It just seemed quite excessive. Thank you.
No, it would. 9,000 would seem excessive, but depends on what the needs were. If it was, you know, kind of to fit that space out, it might have needed full tiling, wall, you know, wet room, etc., a new shower, etc., to accommodate the tenant.
Thank you.
Hey, Martin, did you just want to answer that question about the void? Is that why you had your hand up?
Yeah, thank you. You spotted when that hand went up, didn't you?
Yeah.
So the housing team, as everybody will probably know, have got a waiting list as long as our arms and much more beyond that. So the question isn't the availability of a tenant to go in. The question is about the tenant that's going in circumstances, and how quickly they can get moved from where they are to get moved into the property. Clearly, as Tony said, we want to get the properties turned around as quickly as we can from a physical perspective, which is what Tony's team do. Good relationship with the housing team, and then it's a case of identifying who's coming in, when they're available, and then making sure they move in. So if it goes on much longer, I'd certainly be interested to know about it, but it's not entirely unusual to have a void for a period after that while a prospective tenant gets themselves sorted out.
Thanks, Martin. And Rachel.
Yeah, just a question, and I've probably been really stupid, but in terms of refurbishment of public toilets and making them fit for the purpose, is there any capacity within North to actually provide that service?
We have the capacity to carry out the works. Whether the funding's there, that's the issue. It's what the council asked us to do in terms of any of those improvements to the properties. I mean, we will do reactive repairs. If a toilet was damaged, we'd repair it and replace it straight away. Same with the sink. But in terms of a wider refurbishment scheme, that would look to be instructed through a capital scheme.
Okay, and Martin's put his hand up, so I take it he's got something to say.
If I may, Chair.
Go on.
Yeah, thank you. So Tony's right. So the way that we would allocate any capital towards that sort of scheme is to effectively assess the need for it, the business case for it, and the costs of it, and then a decision would be made on that basis. Typically, for something that we're talking about here, the cost would be significant and would normally necessitate a paper coming out for approval before it happened. But we would always be looking to deliver the best value we can, and then we would go to Tony and the team to commission that and get them onto that particular job.
Okay, Linda?
Chair, and just add, as part of the asset management review group, we will be looking at a little point further down the line. We will be looking at around our toilet stock and seeing what opportunities there are for some further investment in some of them and potential changes to others. But that'll be a little bit further down the line in terms of the asset management process.
Okay, Linda?
Right, thanks, Anthony, but I'm not going to let Martin off on your comments just there. I think you and I should take a little walk, Martin, to our disabled toilets.
Happy to do that, Councillor Groovy.
Right, you let me know when you're in Buxton Town Hall and we'll take a little trip.
We'll set something up. I look forward to that tour of the toilets.
Thank you.
I'm not sure you will look forward to it, Martin.
No, I'm sure he won't, but don't you tell him and put him off, Chris. Thank you.
Okay, Joanna, one last one from Joanna before we move on to capital.
I do have to agree with Linda, actually. I mean, the toilets in Edale, which are not used by residents really, but they are absolutely disgusting and don't help some of the other issues with tourism. I mean, I hope we can look at them with the asset management group and be a bit radical about making them a bit more fit for purpose.
Okay, thanks, Joanna. Okay, Tony, if you want to move on to your last slide then, the capital programme.
Yeah, thank you. So obviously, capital programme, this was the latest position, so we still got March to go in, but fundamentally, we're well on way to achieving all of the key ones across the social housing portfolio. So obviously, all the bathrooms, wet rooms, heating programme, windows and doors are all delivered at 100%. The capital issues have been around in terms of under delivery have been around ones where they've been in general fund. So again, Morelands House and the Buxton Town Hall, where there's some sort of concerns around what the future looks like for those buildings. So we've held back on capital projects for that, but ultimately we're in a good place again for that.
And is there an error on row 5? Delivery of capital programme kitchens? You were doing very well, yeah. 33 of 41, but year to date 2 of 41.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know why that's it's incorrect. 2 of 41 in terms of
well, it must be 33. It must be 33 of 41, and your target's 100%. Yes. So
yes, so we are. I think what might kick that back is and throwing it out was. When they were looking at that, we were just in the process of procuring a new contractor, a new installer actually. So that's happened now. So we were playing catch up in the last month, but we're at 100% on those kitchens now.
Good. Okay. Just to show someone's looking.
No, it's fine. You're right.
Okay. Any other questions for Tony? If not, thank you very much for that. It's very informative.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everybody. Good evening.
Thank you. And we'll move on to item 8, which is just a verbal update on the Cultural Fund. Is that from you, Anthony, or Martin? Martin?
I suspect either of us will probably say roughly the same thing, but essentially, as members may be aware, in terms of one of the budget announcements, there was a number of authorities that were granted a £5 million pot for capital in terms of cultural issues. We're currently going through a process of putting together an investment plan to be able to get that cash and be able to use it. We have to have that investment plan put together and submitted by the 10th of May. We're holding a couple of stakeholder essentially workshops to go through this with a number of organisations. We've identified a couple that we know have got requests or requirements for some capital investments. The first of those workshops will be tomorrow, and then following that, we'll then be putting the investment plan together to get it submitted on time to get the cash available. And we'll hopefully be able to update members at the next meeting of the committee. Well, hopefully by then we'll actually have the cash and be hopefully starting to spend it. But I may be being a little optimistic.
It feels like a very tight timeline, Anthony, but we've seen that before, haven't we?
To be honest, it's a government scheme, so if it's not a tight timeline, I'd be very surprised. But we are sort of bringing in some additional support from Mutual Ventures to help make sure that we've got all the requirements from government to sort of make sure that we can get the investment to us as soon as they will allow.
Okay.
But again, similar, it's also a tight timetable in terms of subject to the plan being approved. We've then only got until sort of March 2026 to get the funding spent, and particularly given that in terms of at least one or two of the projects that we're looking at, they're conservation buildings in a sense. There are some issues around that, but what we're hopefully being able to do, because we've got this unexpected funding available, some of the funding that we've got within the budget that we've already allocated to potentially some of these projects, it may mean that we can sort of not quite dual fund them, but we can potentially fund some of the things that we may not be able to do out of this particular pot. We may be able to fund in other means by using some of this funding that would have funded some of the schemes that we're hopefully going to be able to fund out of this pot. So we can hopefully get a wider impact than what we may have been able to do.
Thanks, Anthony. I'm going to bring Andrew in next, and then I'll come to Joanna and Ed.
Yeah, Anthony's covered something I was going to say actually about the spend by the 26th of March. I mean, I'll just comment on the timescales, if I may, Chair. So we were notified, I think, was it the 6th of March, spring budget, with no notice that we've got the 5 million subject to the investment plan. We got detailed guidance on the investment plan on the 25th of March, and then we had to have a number of clarifications with DLUC officials, which we finally got in front of them last week. So it's only last week we know all the rules, and we've got literally 4 weeks to get our projects together. As the leader says, as Councillor McEwen said, we've got a process for doing that, and we've got a good start actually, because if you recall, in the Lough 2 bid that was unsuccessful, we had the Victoria Hall as a key project in that bid. So again, we're working on the basis that that'll be included in the investment plan going forward. So I think the other thing is not to underestimate the level of information that's required. The funding comes with conditions of us actually identifying the defined outputs and outcomes from a list. So we have to almost present an outline economic business case as well. So that's why we recruited external help to help us to do that. So it's the only other thing I'd comment on really, as well as we probably, Councillor McEwen, intend doing a sort of report, an IED that will sort of set out the investment plan. So as members have got view of what's going forward around the time that we completed. But, and then we'll bring back the detail to a future meeting.
Thanks, Andrew. So I'm going to go to Joanna next, and then I'll come to you, Ed. Okay.
Yeah, I think Andrew's partly answered this question. Actually, I just thought it'd be nice to have a few details of what's actually in the bid. I mean, I recognise that, yeah, the timetables are ridiculous, the amount of detail and the fact that you have a kind of menu, so you have to kind of play around with what you actually need to do in order to fit the menu. I do appreciate the difficulty of all this, but I caught Victoria Hall's, sorry, there was an interruption at this end. Yeah, but I just thought it'd be nice to know sort of exactly where the money is, you're planning to spend money. It's just, if it works.
Chair, yeah, as we said, sort of, we'll look for an IED to sort of be able to provide that additional information. I mean, to a certain extent, by this time next month, we'll already have had to submit the bid, and we'll hopefully be in the process of answering any clarifications that are required by DLUC in terms of getting the funding sorted out. So it is a really short timetable in terms of getting it
no,
around.
I appreciate that.
And you know, to be honest, we've been grateful for particularly the engagement that Joanna, relatively new cultural officer, has been able to pick up, because we are looking for as many schemes as we can do across the borough, because it's slightly more complicated in that it's capital funding. So it means there are a number of organisations that if it was revenue funding, we could have spent it sort of 3 or 4 times over and still have plenty more places looking to spend it for us. But with capital funding, it's slightly more complicated, and particularly, as Martin's noted within the chat, you know, subject to it going through smoothly through DLUC's processes, we'll essentially end up with 20 months to spend it, which in the case of some of the projects will be a little bit of a squeeze. But you know, once we've got the cash, we'll just have to crack down on the whip and make sure the folk that it gets allocated to, we can get them spent.
Yeah, okay, thank you. That's a bit more detailed. Thanks.
Okay, Ed.
Yeah, I was going to say it's very, very, very tight time frames. I mean, and a typical government, it's like a last minute scheme, which is great for us. We've got some more money, but a last minute scheme that they want done like yesterday, which these things don't take 5 minutes, they take lots and lots of time. So I think going forward and impressing on government, if we feed back on this and any future governments that we may have, that we need to say, look, great giving us the funding, but give us more time to spend it, because some of these buildings are listed and heritage buildings and will need listed building consent, planning consent, which could take the time frame that the money that's going to take. Money's got to be spent by. I mean, hopefully we can get like place like Victoria Hall, we can maybe be able to get it through quickly, but it's pushing it, isn't it, to get it through for any building that we've got, because most of the buildings that will want money will be listed in some ways, because most of the cultural buildings are quite old buildings. We don't have any modern or new buildings that are cultural buildings that don't need much money spending on them.
I mean, Chair, to a certain extent, we've been advised that sort of the submission process should be sort of more light touch than the levelling up funding. So we're hopeful of a relatively quick turnaround in terms of a decision. But to a certain extent, you know, this is the timeline we've got for the cash. So we'll endeavour to sort of make sure we can grab the cash and use it as best as possible.
Oh, back to Andrew.
Yeah, so just to outcome of the discussions with the officials, the timelines, the draft timelines are, we submit on the 10th of May, end of May, early June, they would submit the proposals to ministers for approval, but that would rely on resolution of any queries, points of clarification that the officials have. We've been encouraged to talk to them as we develop the bid, which we certainly will. So again, we've talked about it being a package of projects. We want to make sure that they all hang together and we're on the right lines and they make sense. I think the leader referred to the work that we've done on the cultural strategy. So we have sort of set some ambitions for cultural activities across the borough. So I think that will hang everything together. So end of May, early June, it should go off to ministers for approval. And then I suppose the last bit then gets a little bit cloudy, but they're talking end of June, early July approval and provision of a memorandum of understanding that sort of sets out the outputs that we're committing to, but that will all be subject to ministers' availability. And we all know that sometimes other things crop up that sort of delay things. So that's the sort of timescales. I mean, our experience from LUF2 and other funding is sometimes these things take longer. So that's the other slight concern I've got, because we think we've got 20 months, but if it takes 2 or 3 months for it to get turned around by government, then we've got less time, to be honest. So, and then in terms of the sort of timescales and the things that Councillor Siddle pointed out, which are all constraints for us, we have to demonstrate in the bid that we can resolve all of those, and we can put some timelines into giving some guarantees around delivery and so on. That'll be a big part of the assessment that they'll do. But again, a lot of work to do, but we're confident that we'll get a package together and we'll get a credible investment plan, and then we'll have to put the foot on the gas in terms of delivery.
Thanks, Andrew. Back to Ed, I think.
Yeah, I mean, luckily we've got really, really good officers, so we know that we can definitely do this. So that's the one good thing that we have got is really good officers and really good leadership. So that's the one thing. The only thing is obviously what happens if Rishi decides to call an election for June. Will it go to what'll happen then? Will that delay it, or will that mean that they have to go to if obviously there's a change of administration, will it go to the new administration if that happens? I mean, it's unlikely because I think we're looking at probably an October election, but who knows?
Chair, to be honest, we probably can't answer that one. I mean, some folk may have sort of seen that the allocation of areas that have received this funding from government all seem to have a couple of things in common. One of them seems to be around sort of how marginal they are in terms of parliamentary constituencies, but we'd obviously be hopeful that wouldn't be a particular factor, and we're hopeful that sort of they'll be able to get the funding improved as soon as possible.
Thanks, Anthony. Back to Andrew.
Yeah, just a final thing. It's not a mandatory requirement, but we have to indicate on the submissions whether or not our MP supports the proposals. So it's not mandatory that the MP does, but we have to certainly indicate whether or not he supports the proposals. And we obviously will be engaging with the MP during the process over the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Thanks, Andrew. Okay, if there's nobody else on that subject, and I think that was a good discussion, we'll move on to item 9, which is access to services, digital and organisational development strategies. I'm not quite sure who's presenting this.
Chair, I believe Tanya's going to start us off because we've got a bit of a PowerPoint presentation to start it off.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Anthony. We've got, obviously, I'll just talk through the report. There is actually the outcome of the 3 strategies that you approved back in February 2022. We recognised at the time that the 3 sort of overlapped, so we produced one action plan to manage them together. As part of that, one of the main things that emerged was the introduction of a service review programme to actually implement the outcomes in the strategies. That piece of work has been done, and we've now got what we call Alliance Our Future, which is the programme that we'll be running in order to assist with the implementation of those strategies. The presentation I've got, and Sally's doing the honours again, it talks you through where we're up to with the Alliance Our Future programme. So if you can put the presentation up, Sally, I'll talk through it.
We're with you in a moment, Tanya. Won't be a second. Okay. Okay, can you see that now?
Yeah, if you could just put from the beginning, then that's fine. Thank you. Can we? Thanks, Sally. Yeah, we'll start off. So obviously, since this programme is running across both councils, so it is the Alliance journey. But just to sort of highlight where we've come from, we thought we'd take you a run through the journey. I fortunately, unfortunately, have been here right throughout this programme, particularly on the High Peak side. So what we've done there is that you can see the roadmap of where we've come from. Both councils have their own programmes pre-Alliance, where we introduced customer service teams, and then we sort of moved on the digitisation journey. When we came together as an alliance, we came together, both transformation teams, and we implemented the Alliance Improvement Methodology. So that was to bring the workforces and the technology together. We then, as you can see, we moved on to what we called Transformation Plus, which was our transactional service journey. So we looked at the high volume services and bringing them together. Part of all this journey was where we joined up our IT systems as well. So we moved to one system or another, so that we're all working on the same platform. Part of this journey, we went on to the staff engagement. So we set up a service review programme and looked at our values, and we came up with the choice and shape strategies. This then moved on to our channel access strategy. So we started to look at how customers actually accessed our services. You can see we've been on quite a long journey. So in 2016, we introduced our service hubs, where we brought teams together to actually work together. Following on from that, we moved on to the channel shift programme. So this is when we introduced the technology that customer services now use. And this was about making online transactions more possible. So we focused on the website, the portal, and different web forms. And then to promote what we'd implemented, we moved to the I Can Do It Online. So that was to promote the use of the online services that we'd got. And then obviously where we are now is we're looking at the Alliance Our Future launch. The main thing to say behind all this is that technology plays a massive part. And the one thing that is constant is that it doesn't stand still. So we constantly have to keep reviewing it and changing it, updating it and staying current. So we can move on to the next slide, please, Sally. So as Alliance Our Future, you can see there we've set out what the vision is for the programme. So it's to reflect the needs and experiences of our colleagues and customers, to create intelligent and relevant services that are valued by those who rely on them. So the three strategies sort of they overarch all of this. So this is how we brought them together. Next slide, please, Sally. So as you can see, the programme is driven by the technology, but enabled by the people. So it's about how we serve our customers, the technology that we use, and how we make sure that our staff are keeping up with the technology and training, etc. Next slide, please, Sally. So on this slide, you can see what our goals are. So we wanted to create a culture of engagement and innovation and contribution. So this programme has been presented to all our staff, and they've been involved in creating this. So the idea is that we have set up a network, which I'll cover shortly. One of the main things we want to do in this is invest in the learning and development of our staff across the organisation to make sure that everybody's got the right tools to deliver the services. What we wanted to put at the heart of this, we wanted to make this customer centric, so put the customers at the heart of the services we're designing. So we want to design them to be accessible, intelligent and relevant. We want to engage with customers, so part of our process is to hold focus groups with customers across the board, depending which service area we're looking at. But we are looking to increase the self-service opportunities to create a smoother experience. Although we still want to be there for those who have difficulty accessing services online, we want to make sure that they are there for those who need them. Most people want to access things 24/7, but by a better offering, we'll have resources then to support those that need it the most. And then obviously, as part of this, we need to use modern technology throughout the councils. We need to ensure that our systems talk to each other, and we need to remove any manual or repetitive tasks from the processes. Next slide, please, Sally. So the one thing that we wanted to get across to staff is that this has not been driven by financial savings or a need to reduce the workforce. In fact, as part of the OD strategy, one of the things we have done is actually increased our workforce to provide the right people delivering the right services. Any financial savings or efficiencies that do come out of this programme will be reinvested into the service areas. But again, what we wanted to do, we didn't want to do this in isolation. We didn't want a group of people going into service areas and changing the way they worked. We wanted to get them involved in the process. The staff delivering those services know what customers want, they know what works, and we need their buy-in and engagement as part of the process. So the one thing it is not, we're not doing it at once, it's a long-term programme and it'll continue across the next 2 to 5 years. Next slide, please, Sally. So as you can see, where we've come from so far and what we've already started to do. So we've held a number of leadership workshops. So we've invested in developing our leadership teams. So ALT and AMT have had a number of sessions. We've done a staff survey, the results of which I've brought back to this meeting previously. We're now going back out doing a pulse survey to see how that's been embedded, and we've also done an action plan as a result of that staff survey. We've looked at all our project planning and how we've looked at it quite carefully. So we've looked at the areas where we can make the most impact. So we've sort of put a programme together. The first areas that we've done a pilot in communities and climate change, just looking at a few areas, so antisocial behaviour, abandoned vehicles, and we've looked at, and what we'll be doing is looking to use the technology that we implement to drive those improvements. The next big services that are underway, so we're well on the way through the housing review, and then we've also commenced the planning one. We've held a number of workshops, so part of the process is to look at what it is we're trying to do, and then we'll be redesigning the services. Sitting above all of this is we've obviously got our Office 365 platform, and we're looking at how we better utilise that. So that's we've got a new intranet that's coming shortly. We have had some member workshops where members have been involved in looking at what they want out of the intranet. We've also done the same with staff. But the key message across all of this is that we want to engage with the staff, get them part of the process, and get them to, sort of relish the changes that are coming. Next slide, please, Sally. So what we have done is we've launched an Alliance On network. So this sits alongside the programme. It's a group of individuals we've got every single service area represented, and we've also focused on putting our sort of graduates and apprentices and trainees in there as well. So this is to strengthen the two-way communication between the service areas and the project team. We want sort of these staff to act as role models and to test things out. So this is how we're trying to sort of embed the change within the service areas by making them part of it and engaging with them all the way through. So we'll use this network to test things out because, in order to embed the change, you need to try it out, make sure it works. If it doesn't, then change it again. And then obviously we'll road test the communications, and this will be acting as a sort of learning network between staff. But this is it's not just a one-way sort of communication stream. This is a two-way stream whereby we'll hear from the teams and from the staff engaged what staff want to see, what's working, what's not working, and then we'll take it on from there. Next slide, please, Sally. So what's next? We'll be doing the service design and technology review. So the health check is to check for how we provide our services. As I said before, we've done the pilot with communities and climate change, and we have engaged specialist support from SOCTIM Advisory. So they're working with us. They are specialists, particularly in the IT sector for the software that's used across councils. The one thing we do know, we've got a lot of systems we need to change, so that's been factored into how we've prioritised the services. So we've looked at contract end dates, systems that will become unsupported moving forward. So they're the ones with the main focus at the moment. And Socketing will be working with us to help us through that journey. There's a lot of systems or a lot of services where there's not that many system providers. But what we need to do is make sure we get the best fit and the best mix of systems that talk to each other, and that we don't go out there and buy a system that then doesn't talk to any of our other systems. So it's a big piece of work, and looking at that technical architecture to sort of sit above it all. So in building that capacity and that capability for the change, we've set up the network. So it met for the first time last week. So we had an afternoon where we sort of set out what we hope to see from it. It was well attended, and the feedback we've had so far has been very positive. We've already done the leadership workshops. Our transformation board will oversee the delivery of the programme, and the outputs from the transformation board are what they feed into your performance reports. And then we'll be issuing regular programme updates so everyone can see where we're up to and what's coming next. The OD side of that is that there's been a number of areas that have already been covered. So we've already introduced our new appraisal process. All staff will have had an appraisal by the end of April. We are continuing with our feedback from the employees and that two-way communication of what we're doing. Part of the intranet rollout, we're looking at the digital skills training. So that's training for everybody on the use of Office 365, and that will be available for councillors as well as staff. And then the other side to that is we're doing a full review of our internal communications, and that will be fed through the new intranet platform. Next slide, please, Sally. Okay, thank you. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Tanya. Who have we got? So there was a hand up, but I can't. Oh, Joanna.
Yeah, there are a couple of things which are to do actually more with the customer facing. I mean, it was good to hear that you're still going to have, well, whether it's phone or face-to-face alternatives for people who aren't happy using IT systems, can't use computers. And of course, there are people who are actually literate as well, quite a few people in the UK. So, yeah, so it's good that those people are catered for. But I wondered, whether this included helping them and their supporters, because a lot of, I work at Citizens Advice, but I know people also have a lot of private support to actually get onto the systems to fill in a form or something. So I wondered if you were being able to engage with them as you look at what customers want. So that was one question.
Yeah.
And the other thing was just, I mean, I should say first, I do think all this is very good from a kind of organisational point of view. I mean, it's great. Systems should be able to talk to each other and staff brought along and so on. But getting back to customers, you said it's a long-term project, and that obviously makes sense. But it can be very annoying to use a website which is constantly changing. So I wondered how you were going to manage that sort of long-term aspect with respect to customers. If they're expecting to see a form and that one's changed and that one hasn't, and that part of the website,
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the engagement with the customers. I mean, the one thing we are keen to do is to engage with lots of different groups, focus groups, to make sure that we've got everybody represented in the best way we can. The websites are currently undergoing a refresh at the moment. I think we'll try and, I think the thing is to make it easy for people to find things. So it's how we've sort of utilised the search engines. I mean, we've got to keep up with the technology and we've got to move forward. So, but I think it's having the simplest structure, but again, utilising those focus groups to help us design what's going out there and what works and what doesn't, I think is the best way to sort of keep them engaged. But it's one we just need to be mindful of, that people will get frustrated if things keep changing constantly and they can't find anything. The idea is to make it as simple to use as possible. But as I say, also supporting those that can't use the technology and working with them. I don't know if Karen wants to add any more on the access to service side.
Yeah, I'm happy to come in there, Tanya. I was just going to answer your question, Councillor Collins, with regards to assisting those who may find difficulty or not have access because they haven't got the equipment. We identify those customers as they phone us or as they call in face to face, and we will offer to assist them. And we've got examples of where people have gone off now and residents can access services themselves just by having that help. We're also members of the Rural Action Derbyshire group, so we've been to a couple of their meetings, so we're looking there at how we can get focus groups together and get out into the community and help people, and using the information that we've got from our surveys, from our customer satisfaction surveys. So we have got quite a lot of work going on there, you know, empowering, helping people, but also being there for those that perhaps will never want to access services online or will perhaps not have the capability of doing so. So it's important that we're combining both of them.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to bring Andrew in before I bring Ed back in.
Yeah, just to add something else, really, I think will be helpful. I think in terms of all that stuff that Councillor Collins raised, that we won't be taking 5 years to do all of that, as Karen's just articulated. I think when we look at the technology we have, we made real big strides in terms of making services accessible online. And I think, you know, when we've been working with Soccerton Consulting, they're really impressed in terms of the way in which we've got how many services we've got web formed from, the traffic that we've got from those, the change we've made. Because a lot of people do want to help themselves. I know I'm in that situation. You know, it's 8 o'clock on a Monday night. If I want to, you know, do something, I want to do it on my iPad or phone and so on. So we've made really good strides in that. The issue is for us, as Tanya touched on earlier, our technology, with a lot of the sort of functional systems, we have a very small amount of suppliers. So, you know, we're sort of driven by the suppliers a little bit. If you take sort of housing benefits or council tax, you know, there's only a few systems that operate a local authority portfolio. So again, we're driven by those things. So what we've actually got, whilst we made good progress with the front end, it's like madness behind the scenes trying to make it all work. So you know, we've got lots of manual intervention, lots of things where staff are having to duplicate stuff manually into back office systems from, you know, the calls that Karen's team receive. So that's really what that piece is about. But very much, and that's why Tanya's slide talked about it being sort of driven by the technology. We obviously want to make the move with our systems to the cloud, so software as a service as opposed to as buying a service, putting on a computer and having to maintain all of that. There are some restrictions with the complexities of service application providers that we've got. So you've got, I think the bit that's going to take us time is all of that, really. But what I can guarantee is that those things that you've talked about as important, we are focusing on all the time, as Karen's articulated. And I think it's really important, the work we do, you know, around supporting those people who don't access online. And then the other thing is, you know, as you're probably well aware, people helping themselves costs a fraction of money. So if we get the more people we get helping themselves, the more resources we've got then to deploy to support those people who are desperately in need, that need to be helped through the process. So I hope that's helpful.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Ed?
Yeah, we're going through a similar project at work, trying to get all our systems more modern because some of the systems are incredibly old and outdated and are not good. I mean, for example, at Housing Benefit, you've got a choice between Northgate and Academy, and that's pretty much your limit there. So these have they've really got you because obviously you've got no choice to go with the systems. I mean, we went from a system called Anite to a system called Enterprise, which was an absolute nightmare when it started. I mean, it's getting better now, but it's getting used to these web-based programs. One thing that we have done quite well at Islington, we've gone for a system called Love Clean Streets. Now, Love Clean Streets allows people to have an app and download it, and I think it would be really useful for us in High Peak to maybe use that because it gives end-to-end processes compared to what the system that we had previously, which was called Contender. So I think that's a really useful one to look at. Another one to look at is maybe the call centre is 8x8, to monitor and get further feedback. That's a really good system because that can be used for delivering emails and all sorts of different things, and it gives good data. So I think we should be looking at them as well. I mean, obviously they're just a couple of suppliers that we use, but I do think we need to move. I think Granicus is another one we use for an online system as well, which is good. So we've got there's plenty of systems out there that are quite good that we can use, just integrating and making sure they work well together.
Thanks, Ed. I'm going to bring Anthony in before Rachel then.
Thanks, Jay. It was just specifically around the sort of the app type stuff. We will at some point be having discussions with Fix My Street principally around being able to offer that type of app support because we know, while some people think our web forms are lovely, they're not for everyone, and any opportunities to sort of make that process easier are good. And to a certain extent, as you said, there are a number of products that are sort of, we can buy off the shelf. They'll sort out how it connects to our back end and what the information is that we need, so we don't have to go through that faff of doing the product ourselves. And the Fix My Street one has been quite a good one for a whole range of services, and particularly given the setup that we've got, it also includes flexibility in terms of it can report information to the county council as well through that setup, which is one of the issues that we've got to do, particularly with some of the bits that get reported to us. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, it doesn't help when people confuse the borough and the county, and that's a big problem, especially on social media, especially from our people who should know better to tell us which one the borough and which one the county is. They're quite good at highlighting who the borough is, but not quite as good as highlighting who the county is and what they do.
Well, I've got 2 emails in my inbox at the moment, Anthony, asking me to sort out potholes. So yes, absolutely. Rachel, you had your hand up, I think.
Yeah, it's just a couple of comments really. Coming at it from 2 things that are very different. Firstly, in terms of our visibility and availability physically to people, I know from and actually from myself as well, talking to people. You can do most of your banking on an app, but sometimes you really do want to talk to a person, and it is actually quite difficult to talk to people in terms of the council, and maybe that actually has implications for recognising what is High Peak, what is the county council. The fact that the town hall could be a lot more sort of open and welcoming, the hours could fit around working people. I know we want to encourage people onto digital platforms, but sometimes that's not appropriate. And I'm going to echo what Joanna said about the importance of people being able to go in and access things physically. The other thing, and I'm speaking as a teacher whose life is made a misery by appraisal systems, and actually what they can do. And I know that they are meant to be positive. One of the government's recommendations in order to stop the flight of people from teaching careers is to actually loosen up the appraisal framework and the bureaucracy, because although you might start it with a very positive, this is going to improve your career, this is going to help you, it can become an incredible waste, not waste of time, but it can become really intimidating. It can lead to low staff morale. It can take up loads of time and loads of paperwork that actually takes you away from your core purpose. And so I would really say be very careful. I'm not saying we shouldn't have appraisal, but be really careful that it is supportive and that it is streamlined and is done really sensitively, because it can lead to immense problems within organisations. That's just my feeling about it.
Okay, so I'm going to bring Andrew in, then Ed, and then we probably need to wrap on this one.
Yeah, just to give some assurance around the appraisal point that Councillor Quinn's just made. So we have implemented a new system. The previous system was bureaucratic, was paperwork hungry, wasn't actually completed on time because of all those issues. We've moved very much away from, if you like, that strict formality. So discussions between managers, supervisors and employees shouldn't be a one-off paper-driven event. It should be an ongoing relationship. And the appraisal system we've put in place is just recognising the sort of 4 pillars that are required throughout that process. So the employee should understand what's expected of them. The employee should understand the priorities that are being required by the councils, and actually what their role is, and actually have the opportunity to raise any issues. We should be identifying training and development needs. And then the thing we've added in more recently in this iteration is that we ought to be recognising the health and well-being of employees. So there should be, a conversation that sort of takes place on an ongoing basis that recognises those things. Because those are the things that affect employees' performance, and those are the things that need to be taken into account. So we've just started the process to, if you like, relaunch the appraisal system. It's gone down well with the employees so far. Like I say, Tanya, it says it's early days, but we're taking all of that bureaucracy out of the process, Councillor Quinn, to make sure that we have a much more sort of sensible, engaged process.
That's great, thank you.
Okay, Ed, did you want to come back?
Yeah, just thinking that going to some more informal, and I think Andrew's answered most of it, going to an informal appraisal system is really good. We've got a really good one where we do like what's called a check-in, where it's an informal meeting, and then we have like 4 once a month, and then we have 4 formal, like going through the stats and everything and making sure we're on target. And it's linked to obviously the incremental rises if you're at the incremental stage, and obviously performance, but it's not overarching, because it used to the councils, you wanted everything under the sun, and sometimes the paperwork was just so arduous and so boring that you just copied and pasted what you had last year and just changed the wording, and that satisfied and ticked the box, which is not the way forward. But I do think it's good that we are moving to new systems, and I think we've got to get the staff involved. I mean, we've got the call centre staff who use most of the systems, and they need to be fed into the system and fed into the way it's going, because you've got a lot of expertise. I mean, people forget sometimes that you've got the staff on the call centre and not experts, but they really are. They know what the customers want. They know what trends, what drives calls. They know what trends drive calls, and I think we need to make sure they're involved, and I know we will have them with you, Karen and Tanya, and Andrew will have them involved. The other thing as well is about the calls, and it's about making added value, so how we can add value to it. So we want to push people like ourselves who are quite tech savvy online. So we shouldn't be, as councillors, phoning the call centre, so to speak, because we should know how to report things properly. We want to make sure the residents report things properly. So when people say, well, we've got a problem with this, you always got to make sure they've reported it properly. Like I always put the links to Derbyshire County Council when we get potholes, saying, have you reported it this way before you come to me? If you haven't, then please report it that way. Then we can get a reference number, and then we can go back to Derbyshire and say, please, can you get this done? Similar for us, if it's reported to us and then it's not dealt with, we've got evidence to back up that it's not been done. So I think we've got to make sure that people are pushed online, and then the people who can't do it online are the people that can ring the call centre, people who need support, people who can be advised on things. So it becomes more of an advisory service rather than just a functionality and a transactional service on the phone. The phone becomes a more added value. I also think working with, I know Derbyshire County Council have got struggles and financial problems, but it's working with them because we have got 3 sites over the area. We've got Gloucester, Buxton, and we've got the Gamesley site. We have got nothing in the middle. We should be working with them if we can get good partnership arrangements about things can be reported through the library, and librarians can be supporting people to get them online to report the problems if they can't get to an office. Similarly, they could go there and make a phone call if they haven't got money on the phone. If we could work with the Derbyshire County Council, so we've got to work further in partnership with them, because at the end of the day, we will be providing customer service for them, and if they can assist us through the local libraries, that's going to help us have a point of contact for the vulnerable who may not be able to get to Buxton or Glossop or Gamesley. So I think we've just got to make sure we work together with all the partners and push it forward.
Thanks, Ed. Okay, I think I'm going to close it there. Just 2 observations from me. One was on page 38 where it was talking about 5G connectivity. Just an observation, at the moment in Buxton, you're lucky to get 4G. So I think it's a nice ambition to get to 5G, but it'd be great to be at 4G. And then the last thing, just based on something that Ed said, so I have 3 cases in my inbox at the moment where the residents do not want their names recorded on any systems for fear of retribution from their neighbours. And we need some sort of system that allows people to report things anonymously. And the only way people seem to be able to do that at the moment is through a counsellor. I don't know if it's very unusual that I've currently got 3 people like that, but I do suspect that some of the issues that we have around noise, planning, in fact, one of the ones I've got at the moment is about people tipping rubbish, and it might just be the places these people live, that they don't want their neighbours being able to get hold of their names and addresses as having made those reports. So it's just something to bear in mind. Is it's all very well going online, but there are issues in our community about people not trusting the data and not trusting that their data and names will be safe. It could just be I've had a sudden outbreak of it, that's all. So I think that the recommendation here was just to note the report, so we don't need to vote on anything. It's noted unless anybody's got any objection to that. Great, thanks Tanya.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks Karen. So item 10 was any questions referred to the executive member. I don't think we had any questions, so that's good, we can move on. So to move to section 11, exclusion of the press and public. So Lyndon, I think you've got to stop the recording.